for some context for those who may not be as familiar, the RIAA sued Suno and Udio in separate lawsuits in June of 2024. Very recently, UMG and Warner settled with Udio and Suno respectively, and those settlements turned into partnerships. UMG partnering with Udio and Suno partnering with Warner, and the Warner deal is quite interesting because I think Suno acquired one of Warner's companies, Songkick, I believe, in that acquisition. And what that shows is that, alongside those developments and Spotify starting its AI music lab for artists, it seems that labels and DSPs, especially in the US region, want to, have some level of control of the innovation. So the result of Udio and UMG is that Udio users can no longer download. Seems good, right? But what are the other implications of that? What does that mean for artists? How are they being considered? It's the same thing with the Suno and Warner partnership. The big thing that I've been thinking about is, this is great in the licensing aspect, in that labels can protect their IP. But again, how does it prevent artists from being replaced, not by an AI startup, but by the very labels that are supposed to pay them? This is something that I've seen as like a big implication, especially as we see more partnerships go on. It's very clear that major labels are investing in AI and that development, but there's innovation without protection, similar to what you were saying, Jose, or actually, I guess, opposite to what you're saying. Speaking from what I've seen on our side of the world, everyone is sort of focused on the innovation without thinking about the complexity of the issue. And, to your point about how media has to converge, it's really not at the moment. There's all sorts of it seems that different industries within entertainment are taking different decisions. How many of you guys are familiar with the Disney and Sora deal that just happened? Just show of hands. Okay, so for those who are unfamiliar, Disney invested in Sora to, I think, opt in for their character IPs. And so rather than protecting their IP, they're basically giving it alongside investment for R&D. And I don't know, it's a relatively bold move, I think, on the part of Disney, who's usually very, very protective of their IP. But it goes to show, Stella, to your point, that if we're having to make decisions across the entirety of media, then all of media has to align, and I don't think that's happening at the moment. Suno and Udio caught a lot of our attention back in 2024 when they made their announcements and started doing presentations and panels and whatnot. And what followed, a lot of there were a lot of licensable models that came out of the woodwork and showed their R&D as well. But I think one part of this is, how do they retain publicity with their customer base and continue moving forward? Basically, I think that there's it's not as simple a narrative as Suno and Udio have been able to deliver, for better or for worse, and other companies along those lines. I think that a big part of this is showing people that licensable models are not only going to be more, they could be more fine-tuned, for example, if you consider the concept of less is more, if you're training on a certain genre rather than, every single one, for example, you're probably going to get better generations in that genre. And, it's about the messaging, I think, figuring out how to show people that, that's going to be useful. But not only that, but that, investing, I'm thinking in the VC terminology, investing in ethical solutions will benefit them in the long term. Let's say that things go, another way with Suno and Udio and the lawsuits, because remember, Sony hasn't made a decision yet. there is still some there are still some elements up in the air with that. And let's say that there's something that swings the other way on the side of protection, then all the investment will have been for naught. But if there's a way to show that not only are ethical solutions profitable, but they're also going to allow you to look good in the world of entertainment, I think that's there's a matter of convincing them that there's an ROI there, that there's going to be revenue and profit. You have to be able to sort of translate the benefits of ethical models to VCs, and I think that that's something that we are still working on collectively.